Okay. All right, today is February 24th. This is the regular board meeting for District 64 School Board, Park Ridge-Niles. The board is back in open session. The board was in closed session for about 40 minutes under 2C1, which is the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, and 2C2, collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives. Let us do a roll call again. Phyllis? Here.
Sotos?
Here.
Sellis?
Here.
Levinsky, present. Here. Kennedy?
Here.
Okay, quorum carries.
Okay. All right, let us stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Nikki, our sixth board member, asked me to share with you. She was hoping to be with us today, but she had her baby on Tuesday. Little Rory is part of their family now, and the older siblings were coming to meet him tonight, so she really wanted to be there, and she should be. So she is not with us today. All right, and that is all I have for my opening remarks. Let's go to recognitions. Let's start with the Park Ridge Community Fund Holiday Campaign.
All right, Kevin Dwyer and Tim Gleason are going to come up to talk to us about the fund.
Hi, good evening. We are pleased to share with you that District 64 raised just over $15,000 to support the annual Park Ridge Community Fund Drive. This total exceeded our goal, and we're grateful for all of our staff members throughout the district who contributed. This was made possible because we really focused on getting a bigger percentage of staff members to contribute and participate in the fund, which we did achieve. So we had more people participate this year than in prior years. In addition, we also reach out to our retired District 64 staff, and their contributions really pushed us over the top to reach our goal. Tim?
Sure. A couple just people we'd really like to thank, well, groups of people. The first is all the representatives from each of the 7 buildings, campaigning during the holiday season to get people to give to these charitable groups that all need, their funding is really down during COVID. It's been really great just seeing how hard they've worked for us to exceed our goal. Has been great. And we'd also like to thank Val from the business office just for all the collection of money. There were a lot of big donations, but there were a lot of small donations as well, and it just is a big logistical piece. So we're just really grateful for that, and we're just grateful for the community that we work in and the staff's contributions. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks Kevin and Tim for your leadership and all who donated to help our families. All right, and we also have another recognition, and this is a student recognition for the spelling bee.
Yes, and this is Megan Kiefer, one of our curriculum specialists.
Thank you. Yes, as you mentioned, as a curriculum specialist, I also coordinate the District 64 Spelling Bee. So I'm here today to invite 2 of our winners up here. I have Sarah and Aisha, if you want to come stand up here as I read a few remarks. You guys want to stand over here? There you go. So we hosted the 12th annual Spelling Bee this year on February 7th. Our top 3 spellers came from, after all 7 schools had almost 150 participants. 21 of them were the top 3 from each building came to the District 64 Spelling Bee. This year's bee included 15 rounds of nail-biting spelling and vocabulary knowledge. By round 6, our top 3 spellers emerged. We had Avi Marani, who was not able to be here tonight, Sarah Winger, and Aisha Hakim. These 3 went on for 9 more rounds, battling it out. All 3 survived words such as, and I'll probably mispronounce them, ale, Chaucerian, Dorsey, and Ziggurat. And those are not in my everyday vocabulary. So I was very impressed with their work. After round 15, Sarah and Avi tied for second place, and Aisha here correctly spelled windbaggery as her championship word. So all three spellers have a lot to be proud of for their preparation and accomplishments. As I mentioned, Avi had a conflict tonight, but the other two are here. So we'd like to give them a giant round of applause. And just note that Aisha will be representing District 64 in the North Cook Regional Spelling Bee on March 9th, and we know she will do us very proud. So congratulations. With me too.
Wait. Dad wants to get a picture.
I have something else. All right, here, you guys want to hold these? I also brought some certificates from. All right. Oops, and I gave you the wrong one. That's yours. Congrats, girls.
Okay, so the winning word was windbaggery. It's a lengthy talk or discussion with little or no interesting content. So if any board members can use that today during the meeting, you're going to get a gold star. Okay, no one liked that. That's all right, we're going to move on. All right, so Eric's going to have his COVID and update.
Yes, so a couple things to update the board on. First of all, as you're well aware, there have been various rulings in the last couple of weeks that have had impact on our mitigations and our plan for school. So I'm always cautioning that anything we decide could change any day based on the fact of a new ruling coming down or something's changed. In terms of us going mask recommended last week, there were some incidents of, students interacting with each other inappropriately over masks. A couple of situations with students being concerned about classmates. But really, overall, it has been much fewer than I would have expected. And I really feel that the district has responded well and has reacted well to us moving to a mask recommended environment. Right now, all school districts are considering their other mitigations and what steps they need to take with those. Primarily being around contact tracing and quarantining is the biggest one, but there are several others that are being talked about. And our Board of Education is going to be discussing some changes at an upcoming meeting, which I think we're going to talk about tonight. And then we will have information for the community next week in regard to some additional changes. So those are the pieces I had for this week, or this month.
Any questions from the board?
So Eric, you mentioned discussions. Do you envision like actual motions being on that agenda?
Yes, and the board will have to approve the changes, yes.
Are we ready to give a date for that meeting? Or do you want to wait till later in the meeting, Denise?
Yeah, so I mean, I think as I connected with all of you today, I think we agreed upon Monday we would meet to approve that plan.
So Monday, February 28th.
Yes,
Okay.
and so we'll talk about that later with the board interviews. But yeah, thank you, Gareth. Okay. All right, anything else? Okay. At this point of the meeting, we welcome public comments. Each speaker is given 3 minutes to address the board. Comments may be made on almost any matter related to the operation of schools, but we ask that you refrain from making comments concerning individual students or staff members. The board uses this time to listen to community questions and concerns, but will not respond immediately to requests for information. Additionally, the board cannot take formal action on non-agenda items. Contact the board president via email if you wish to discuss your topic further. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address if you are comfortable for the minutes. And so we have a few folks who signed up for public comment. We'll do those first. The first one I have is Ala. If you want to come to the podium, thank you.
Okay. Good day. My name is Alla Babrianska, 1345 Landrigan. Actually, I made a last-minute decision to come here because I was waiting email, the same as came to District 207 about dropping quarantines. But we didn't get that. Kind of wondering why, because, well, like the court said that all of those measures supposed to be dropped and illegal. Actually, I want to praise the district and give it a due about how they handled all of this, because even in our house, I had to read my kid about that the really mask is off. And they reported really nice environment, and we get communication from the principals. So that was well done, and I'm happy about it. But next day, my actually friend or classmate of my daughter, her mom contacted me at 7 a.m. that her daughter is quarantined, and they're saying if we are quarantined too. Basically came out to be that nobody's quarantined from that class but her. We were like panicking, deciding why she's quarantined and going through this. Nobody answered her from school, which only figure out that in email they stayed the class. And she was trying to figure out how she would see that person. And actually we made a wrong conclusion. I figured out later who was actually the reason, and they've seen it on Tuesday. So the matter is that she was denied due process. She probably was not in the line being quarantined because of 2 people. There was 24 people quarantined. Why I'm telling this story? Because it doesn't make sense, really. It doesn't make sense, any of this quarantine. You can send all communication to the school, to the parents about that there is a person who was have COVID. Please follow your kids, their symptoms. But I don't know, it was 30 kids today from the Lincoln. Do you think that those all kids have COVID and they have to be seated? They have to be in the class? At this point, they need to explain why, where, who is this, and nobody's communicating about this. This is the last piece which I want to put in place after the mask. I was just waiting for this email and for common sense from you guys. Hopefully that will be coming. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next we have Elizabeth Juris, and if you want to come on up, I saw you back there. Yep.
Hi, Elizabeth Juris. My kids are really happy that their schools are among the 85% of Illinois schools that are now mask optional. They've been thrilled with it that they get that option. So I just wanted to start off with that. Throughout the pandemic, we've seen that the school mask mandates have really not affected the pandemic trajectory. As I don't know how many people follow the numbers, but as of yesterday, we hit a 7-day positivity of under 3%, and that's a low we haven't seen since November. I'm sure you are aware of that. And yesterday, Park Ridge only had 4 new cases in the whole town of Park Ridge. And that kind of compares to where we were at in mid-January. We were into the 100 case per day range. So, we're really quite low. In addition, I saw there were only 11 cases in D64 last week. That was 214 to 220. That's compared to 71 the week prior. And then from what I saw, we had a high of 156, and that was week 13 through 19. I am concerned that we are still quarantining healthy kids without due process, and that we are treating unvaccinated children differently from vaccinated children. And I'm glad to hear that that's something that is going to be addressed, because I hadn't seen any communication about that. So some of what I'm saying might be moot. But I just wanted to know if there is a plan. It sounds like there is, to shift to something like D207 has done regarding eliminating the close contact quarantine, regardless of vaccination status. Since January, D64 has had 568 students test positive for COVID-19. How many of those were fully vaccinated? We all know that if you're vaccinated, you can still get COVID. During that same time, 481 students were quarantined as a result of being a close contact. How many of those 481 students ended up testing positive? I'm looking for what specific law or policy we're using to make these quarantine decisions. Following the appellate court dismissal of an appeal by Governor Pritzker, Oak Park Elementary D97 put out this statement, quote, "After reviewing the latest court ruling with legal counsel, we will no longer be excluding asymptomatic unvaccinated students or staff who are identified as close contacts of a positive COVID-19 case," end quote. And I was surprised that we hadn't heard anything on the close contact from D64. So again, I'm glad that that will be forthcoming. I did receive a general email from Lincoln a couple hours ago. It wasn't relating to my children, but they have one positive case, and there are 32 close contacts that have been identified. I don't know why we're still doing this. I think that's everything. Under time.
With 8 seconds to spare.
Yay.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Okay. All right, next, I believe we have Ariel.
Hi. So I'm just going to read directly from a court order from Cook County that was entered by Judge Taylor just 2 days ago about one of our students who was quarantined as a close contact, and I also emailed this to everyone, but just some of the highlights. An order of quarantine constitutes a substantial deprivation of one's liberty interest. Therefore, the law quite appropriately places a high burden on a governmental body seeking such relief. It is not enough that CCDPH allege that quarantine is necessary to prevent community transmission of COVID-19. Rather, the CCDPH must also allege a medical basis for the duration of the quarantine period that it imposed on the respondent, and then prove it by clear and convincing evidence. To be sure, the duration, this is my daughter. Hello. To be sure, the duration of an order of quarantine constitutes an infringement of a liberty interest as much as an order of quarantine itself. By not providing any medical basis for a 10-day period of quarantine, the CCDPH once again fails to sufficiently allege facts to state a claim for the involuntary quarantine of the respondent. As this case aptly demonstrates, a quarantine order may be of such brief duration that by the time the matter is tried, the quarantine order will have been lapsed and the case will have become moot. Therefore, as a practical matter, the procedure that respects the due process and other constitutional statutory rights of a respondent would necessitate that the petitioner be prepared to present evidence in the first instance through witness and documents if the respondent, as appears to be the case here, is not prepared to stipulate to or otherwise disputes the salient facts alleged in the petition. The court may not deprive one of their liberty interests without giving them the opportunity to confront the government's witnesses and to present their own witnesses. Thanks.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, are there other public comments? All right, come on to the podium, state your name.
Lucas Fuchsa here. Good evening, everyone. What better segue than for Ariel to start mentioning and reading from that order? I was fortunate enough to be the attorney who represented the student in that case. First of all, I do have to commend the district. This is exactly what we required for them to abide by law. Now, it did take a little nudging because Dr. Alaimo first told the student to quarantine. I emailed her, and then finally we got an order from the Cook County Health Department, which is exactly what is required by law. I was shocked and happily shocked by receiving that information. Just so everyone knows, because there's been such a discussion about quarantine, after that process is done, after you have that Cook County Health Department order, the Cook County Health Department has to, within 48 hours, get a court order from Cook County Court in this case, because that's where we are, authorizing the quarantine. In this case, the Cook County Health Department failed to do that on two separate occasions. The judge, which wrote a very well-reasoned opinion, as Ariel read most of, determined that there was no medical basis, and also that the Cook County Health Department can't just simply willy-nilly throw affidavits from different people, but actually has to present witnesses just like you would in a trial. Now, this is a huge, huge waste of resources, but again, if the district is complying with the law, then I am happy to see that be done. What then frightens me, on the other hand, and by the way, now with 1 day left on the possibility of quarantining this child, which all they want him to do is wear a mask, there's 1 day left, which is tomorrow, and the Cook County Health Department filed its third amended petition to force this poor child to wear a mask for half a day, because the hearing's not until 11 a.m. tomorrow. What a waste of resources, and this can't be for the protection of the children. That we know there's ulterior motives involved, and I'll let you speculate as to that. However, what disturbs me as well is getting this information about the potential quarantining, and it looks like it will be, of 30 or 32 students at Lincoln Junior High. That is not going to happen. I'm going to try to contact every single parent, and I'm going to tell them to call me, and we're going to go through the process that's required by law. I appreciate the fact that you guys have decided to go mask optional, but the law also doesn't allow you to quarantine children. I will fight for this and show that we are right because the law requires it, as I've shown already. I don't mean to be antagonistic. I don't mean to be difficult. I just want things to be done according to the law. There's a reason the statute was written the way it was. It doesn't allow the schools to quarantine children arbitrarily, close contacts or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, how about other public comments? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the meeting agenda. So look it over. Any board members have any additions, deletions, anything moved around?
I just wanted to point out that something might be missing here, and is that our community over the weekend saw some hate literature that was deposited around town, and I think I certainly, as a board member, was disappointed to see that in our community. I think it was terrible. I think, hate doesn't have a home here, and I think we should, I personally denounce that, and I'd hope the other board members here would join our friends in the Jewish community in town in also denouncing that the hate literature that was found here. I think it was many communities around Cook County that happened, but I know there's nothing on the agenda around that, so I wanted to raise that as a point that we stand with our Jewish friends in town.
Thank you, Gareth. Anything else that anyone wants to move around, add, delete? Okay. Okay, then we will move to our next item on the agenda, which is an exciting one, the appointment of the Director of Student Services. Eric, this is yours.
Thank you. Yes, we're very excited tonight to recommend Alicia Schmeiser for our next director position for Student Services. I really do think that tonight is exciting over welcoming Alicia, but I also think it's a celebration of everything that Dr. Frost has done the past several years to bring our special ed program to where it is. And now I believe Alicia will be able to take those foundations and build from there and continue to have special education keep trending up in this district. She has come from a social work background and also has been a director in a previous district that is smaller than ours and now is ready to move up to a larger district. And also her previous district feeds into 207, so she's very familiar with our area and services as well. So I think she brought some family tonight. So Alicia, if you don't mind just standing for a second so we can all see you.
Welcome.
Welcome. Now, we do officially have to have the board go through a vote, so we will do that part, and then you'll be official in a second. But yes, I am excited to welcome her to the District 64 team.
Are you ready for a motion?
Yeah, you want to do the motion,
I'll just
Carol?
do it, yeah. I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, approve the appointment of Alicia Schmeisser as the Director of Student Services effective July 1st, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so Carol had the motion, Gareth had the second. Any discussion from the board?
I want to just say that Dr. Olson talks to us when he makes some decisions, and he's always excited about new hires. But on this one, it seemed like super excited. So the expectations are pretty high.
Well said.
Okay. Anything else? Now that we have the pressure, Tom.
Right.
Okay. All right. I think we're ready for the roll call vote.
Sotos?
Yes.
Lubinsky, yes. Pearl?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Salas?
Yes.
You're hired. Welcome.
Congratulations. If your number one fan's on board, then everything's going to be good, right?
You bet. Well, welcome, Alicia. We're looking forward to working with you. All right. Okay. Now we move on to the board has talked about full-day kindergarten for at least 6 months, maybe as much as 23.
Skipped A4.
I'm on A4, full-day kindergarten, right? Oh,
Sorry.
is there, okay.
Do you want me to
know,
read?
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm happy to move it.
You know, I'll just, Denise,
Okay,
did
thank
you
you.
need a moment?
Sure.
Can I move it? Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, direct the superintendent to revise the school district's website to make the international travel guidance optional. This change would be effective Monday, February 28th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, so Gareth had the motion, and Carol had the second. Thank you, Gareth. How about discussion on this? Gareth has brought this up before, and so discussion on making this policy optional.
Yeah, sure. I did ask for this to be added to the agenda, so thank you for adding it. I think it's time with spring break coming up. Our numbers are really low. I think parents need to understand, very clearly what the guidance is prior to departure for a potential cruise or a visit to Mexico. Who knows what? I hope they enjoy their spring break. I also want them to know that this guidance is now optional when they return home, so there's no confusion. So that was my motivation, and hope the board can find a reason to pass it tonight.
How about questions, comments?
I mean, so if we are, if this is effective February 28th, and if we are having our meeting that day, right, is that what we're thinking for the next meeting? So then it's fine because we could do everything all at once or implement it, well, not implement it, but I mean, at least make the changes to the website all at once with whatever dates we put in there, so it's not so piecemeal. So that's fine. I mean, I understand why you wanted this one first, but then we're going to be discussing other things on Monday, so that's fine.
Yeah, I think the difference was the plan is this is different from the plan, and this wasn't in the governor's executive order. It was a separate decision point, I think, so it wasn't part of our plan, so it's clearly separate from that, and that's why it needs to be treated, I think, differently from Monday's meeting.
And all I'd like to say is the guidance is to peel back layers, and this is yet another layer after masks, and I'm just happy that our district is not doing the peel back in an extremely slow manner, and this is one that made sense, So I'm glad we're doing this one tonight, and hopefully Monday night, we can continue with the plan on peeling back layers until we're at a point where, we feel comfortable with where the pandemic is today.
But Carol, I think it was a good point on making sure that our website's, accurate and updated, so appreciate that. Okay. All right, and then why don't we take a vote? Roll call?
Okay. Lubinsky, yes. Sotos?
Yes?
Pearl?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Salas?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now the next motion, as I was going ahead here, it's the approval to Resolution 1283 to implement a full-day kindergarten program. We've talked about full-day kindergarten for certainly the last 6 months. We need to officially approve it. So how about we take the action item and then we can go into discussion.
I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, approve the resolution to implement full-day kindergarten for the 2022-23 school year.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, so Carol had the motion. Thank you, Carol. Phyllis had the second. All right, how about discussion from the board?
I could either give my discussion now or right before I give my vote, whichever way you feel.
Go now,
Okay.
as long as it's not a windbaggery.
No, it's, there you go, she got it.
There you
She-
go, I
ding,
got the
ding,
gold
ding.
star.
So, I mean, voting now for, officially voting now for full-day kindergarten after we've come all this way and spent money, and it seems to just be a formality at this point. So, the fact that I'm going to vote yes for this, I still want everyone to understand that the process that got us to here, I still wasn't very happy with. But since we're here and this is happening, then I'm gonna go ahead and vote yes for it. But it could have been done a little differently.
I have a quick question on section 1, because it's got the further and then or commencing with the, does it make a difference from a legal perspective, which one gets striked out and when the motion is signed by the president and the secretary?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, which?
Which?
There's optional language in the resolution, but it seems apparent that we're voting on the commencing with the 22 to 23 school year because we're not doing it just for one school year.
Yeah,
Juris
exactly.
just wanted that
That's-
clarified.
Right.
Thanks,
So-
Carol.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
So that option should be selected, and the language for the, you can just strike
Okay.
in the written
When we
resolution
sign.
that's signed,
Yes.
right?
Okay. All right, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Then, other than that, I'm good
Okay.
to vote yes.
All right, anything else, Carol, Phyllis?
No, I'm fine.
Only to add that this is actually a full-day kindergarten with the curriculum and not an extended daycare, as some people in the community continue to say. And I think Eric and Nick are probably going to put something together more formal on the Facebook page as our district page. But it's just very infuriating when we're spending this amount of money for teachers, a curriculum, brand-new facilities, to have people just continue to give incorrect information and say that it's extended daycare because we're paying for it, when the real reason we're paying for it is because we don't want our district to be in the red line and be in debt a few years from now. So I just want to clarify that, and like I said, I think the district will follow up on that, but I'm still voting yes.
Okay, I think we're ready for the vote. Phyllis?
All right, Sotos,
Yes.
Salas,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Lubinsky, yes. Pearl.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. It is official, full-day kindergarten. All right. All right, let's move on to our next agenda item, and this is the presentation on a proposal for the ESSER 3 funds. Eric, this is yours, I think.
Yes, there were a lot of people.
Hang on.
There were a lot of people that contributed to these pieces, so we just thought it was easier to put under my name. But really,
Are we off on the agenda? I got, at least on my version, they might have.
Yeah, you know what, I'm using a paper one from a few days ago, sorry. Okay. All right, let's back up. I will go to the electronic copy, thank you. Okay. Yep, okay, so Joel, this is Joel. Preliminary enrollment projections for the 22-23 school year and discussion of staffing. So Joel, you are up.
All righty, just give me 1 second. I got spreadsheets and all kinds of things, and so I apologize for that. So I always think it's weird that the night that I always come and start to talk about enrollment and staffing for the next school year, it always seems to be a snowy night in February, which seems a little odd, but it is that time of year because enrollment and staffing takes place very quickly. And as we know, we've already started to look at our kindergarten enrollment, which is opening up. And our regular enrollment will be coming quickly also. So as we look to next year, we are implementing a rollover formula like we did last year. Prior to that, we really looked at the McGibbon demographic report, and Dr. McGibbon, who had come and done a study of our enrollment up through the 2028 school year, had been really accurate prior to COVID. There were years which he was, for the entire district, his numbers were off by less than 20 students. So it really was a good formula at the time. Unfortunately, COVID hit, and everything dramatically changed for us as we saw we saw our enrollment dramatically change 2 years ago. So last year we implemented the rollover method where we simply take the students in what we have right now and we just take those kids and we roll them up 1 grade level for our projections. And, did that work last year? Well, if we would have went with the McGibbon report, he projected 4,623 students. We ended up with 4,444 at the start of the year. He would have been off for his study by 179 students. With a straight rollover, we had predicted 4,410, or a differential of 34 students. So the rollover right now seems to be a little bit of a more accurate projection for us. Now, I'm going to say there are 2 things that are going to be obviously unknowns. The first is moving to full-day kindergarten. When we do a rollover, we simply take the kindergarten numbers we have right now, and we're just going to use those again. Now, last year that worked pretty well. This year, with the addition of full-day kindergarten, I can't sit here and tell you that that 400 number for kindergarten is going to be the same thing. I think many of us project that we'll probably get more kindergarten students, but we also have no historical data to base on what that's going to be like. So we're going to stay with the rollover model. The other thing is that we have seen, as I talked about in September, that COVID dramatically impacted our elementary buildings, specifically at our primary grade levels. Normally at first grade is a grade level where we will get a lot of students that come back from full-day kindergarten somewhere else. Last year we got some first graders, but not to the same level that we have anticipated in previous years. In the straight rollover, first grade is one of the grade levels that is down dramatically, 61 students. Now, can we project that we may be greater, closer to that? Yes, but do I think it'll be a full 61? Probably not. However, our building principals, primarily at Field, Carpenter, and Washington, tend to get a lot of first grade, and they also have first grade bubble sections. They do prepare for the anticipation that if we were to get extra students and they were to pop a bubble at first grade, they build in those contingencies in their schedules and their staffing plans. So while we're going to go with a straight rollover model, we also take into account some of this historical data of where we do typically get more students, and we will use that to build in contingencies. Again, we'll only use those if we need them, but we do take those into account. So with that being said, if we look at a rollover model, we're projecting 4,308 students. Currently today we have 4,458, so we'd be down 148 students. Where are those students? Like, if you were to say to me, where is the biggest decreases? By the memo that I showed you or the board, you can see it's primarily at our elementary buildings. Our middle schools are projected to only be down 3 students from next year. There will be no change in sections. Basically, the middle schools are status quo. Our elementaries, and it's really first grade through 5th grade, is where we're seeing the dramatic drop. As I mentioned before, we have first grade that's looking to be down 61 students. Second grade is looking to be down 33 students. Third grade is up 18. Fourth grade is down 23, and fifth grade is down 46. So of that 148 students, it's really 145 students that were down, and it's all at the elementary level. Now, there's two ways to look at that. One could be COVID has had a dramatic impact, and as those smaller groups, that kindergarten, first, second, are starting to move through, we're seeing that the numbers are just smaller. The other way to look at it, and I can't say this isn't the case also, is I went back and looked at some of our historical data, and back in years 2015, 2016, 2017, our enrollment is pretty much what it is projected to be next year. So we built up, as Dr. McGibbon said we would, but he also started to see a decline where we would start to head back down. The other thing that we have to take into account is maybe that decline started a little bit quicker because of COVID. Now, we shouldn't think that a decline means, oh my gosh, we're going to have all these empty things. That's not what we're saying. It's just saying we may not be back at that 4,600 level. It may be something we're going to look closer to the 4,400, the 4,500, somewhere in that range. But again, we'll take all of this into account as we move forward and really look at, as enrollment starts to come in, what that looks like in the buildings. So I'm going to stop for a moment there because I have this broken up into 3 sections, but what are the questions you might have about enrollment specifically?
I'm sure you took into account the students who left due to COVID restrictions that we had compared to restrictions to private schools and the potential of them coming back, anticipating that our restrictions are going to be equal or less than what the private schools are. You've taken that into consideration in these numbers?
Well, we took it into consideration, as I said. While we didn't use historical data as something to, build our sections, our principals do take it into account about what typical numbers are. So, for example, and I'm going to use field because I was last on the phone with Principal Goodman. There are sections that are typically down that are normally bigger. They're usually 5, and they're looking at 4. And so again, they build in these contingency plans, so if those students do come back, we're ready for them, and we have that schedule ready to go.
And the lowering or the lesser students that we're anticipating having, that's not going to increase the amount of children in each class by beyond what the district's
No, we still stay within our class.
We stay within our class
right.
recommendations.
Yeah, and to that point, Tom, we have bubble sections every year. A bubble section is when we become within 3 students of our class size guidelines. If we drop, we take a section away. If we hit that max and go over it, our principals do 2 things. They verify that everybody is enrolled. We verify, residency, all of that. They check with all the parents to make sure that the kids are coming, and then we will look to add an additional section.
So the board then gets periodic updates.
Correct.
On these bubbles and what's
Yeah,
happening with.
and I was going to say is one of the things, this is early, again, tonight is not an action item, it's simply a discussion. These are what we see today, but obviously as we did last year, as things start to change, I'll sit and go over all of that information with Dr. Olson. He'll update the board, and then there'll be also not only through the Friday memos, but times during the year that at the board reports we'll come and speak about what's going on, and if we need to add some additional staff, or if things are going the opposite way, we'll update the board on that also.
So Joel, thanks for addressing my concern about the first grade, because that's the one until obviously next year when we get full-day kindergarten has been the one where we get the influx in from those parents who had previously gone parochial. And so this will be the last year we have to deal with that issue, but then we'll have to deal with the new issue of how many kindergartners we're going to get, in all likelihood. So I hear you that you're using this rollover methodology, but effectively you're projecting those who are in kindergarten this year will be your first graders next year, but no more. And you're comfortable with that right now as an assumption. Yeah. But looking at just to get a sense here, it seems like the ones on the bubble are Carpenter and Washington that are currently only looking at a first grade of 3 sections each. So those are the ones to keep an eye on for now.
And it's a great point. And I've had discussions with both of those principals because, and for example, Brett Balduff feels pretty confident by the time this is all said and done, he's going to get those first graders. Now, as he said, we'll build what we have, but we're ready to go and change the schedule because they're kind of like what I would call it is you're building two schedules at one time. You have that additional, if this bubble pops, we're going to add this class, and you already know where it's going to go into the schedule. And they usually sit down and talk to their staff about that as they head further into the year, because if something changes over the summer, they want people to be aware of it.
Okay. Yeah, the only additional complexity as well this year might be is just something to think about is it's the contingency plans if some construction runs behind in a certain school. As I think about this, right, if you have a bubble burst, just as you figure out you need a contingency plan, that could cause some capacity constraints very quickly, and so just something to maybe think about as you're thinking through those contingency plans for classrooms and if the construction runs slightly behind.
It's a great point. I feel really confident in Tony and Adam in the fact of their communication, and not only with myself, but with Dr. Olson, if they foresee some issue, that we would get that and to your point, figure out how to handle that and get that word out to people quickly.
I think it's always good to plan ahead, so.
Absolutely.
Phyllis, Carol, anything?
No, thank you.
Okay, so now I'm going to go to the second. I got 2 parts left, sorry. The second part is about sections. So first one is enrollment, second part is sections. Sections really mean the actual classrooms and a classroom teacher. So at the middle school, as I said, our enrollment is not changing. Everything is status quo. The number of sections we're anticipating at our middle schools are exactly the same. Where the big changes or the discrepancy that we're going to see is the elementaries. Being down 145 students through grades 1 through 5, it's down 9 sections across the district, okay? Now, in a normal year, I'll be honest, I'd probably be sitting up here freaking out a little bit because that's a lot. But 2 things are happening. The first one is that we have full-day kindergarten coming, so we're adding 10.5 sections. So if you look at that alone, we anticipate being up 1.5 sections. The other thing about that is, if you look at the bubbles, as Gareth has pointed out, we do have a number of bubbles. So we do anticipate that probably by the time this is all said and done, we will probably be up a little more than that. Again, the good thing about when you do a rollover and it's low, it's easier for us to go up than try to go backwards. Because the building principals can be, their ability to build the schedule this way is quicker and easier because they've done it before versus having to contract. So looking at our sections, what might that do for staffing? The biggest question that I always have is, do we have to RIF or reduction in force any of our teachers? So because of the fact that right now we have 10 retirements, because we have the addition of kindergarten, we do not anticipate having to RIF any staff members. We will be moving some staff members around. We will no longer have a need for EDK. So those EDK teachers will be going over to our elementary buildings and be taking over a number of those kindergarten spots. Due to the retirements, we also will have, some naturally open positions within the building. We also have a lot of people who are interested in these kindergarten positions. So there will be staff moved throughout the building, but I think what we're going to find is most of that are people who are wanting to move and take advantage of these new openings that are occurred by our kindergarten. What are we looking for next year? We are not looking to add any additional staff beyond what might be needed for the kindergarten and special ed. The only 2 things we're going to ask for is we're going to ask to keep 2 groups of staff members for 1 more year. The first one is our 2.5 ELA differentiation coaches. These are staff members who were originally brought forth to help with the implementation of our ELA curriculum at the elementary level. They've been dramatically impacted their ability to do that by COVID. The first year, they helped teachers handle and adapt to the remote. The second year was really the hybrid and really working with teachers that way. This year is the first year they've really been able to get into the classroom and work on that targeted small group instruction with teachers and really work on how to master that. But what we have also seen is a number of those teachers have been impacted by teachers being out. And when we've been short substitutes, we've had to pull Lori's ELA coaches to help. And kudos to Lori and her staff. They're phenomenal. They step up every single time. But that also means they typically have to cancel things and they have to reschedule. So we'd like to keep them for one more year because we have not reached all of our goals, and the teachers find that they have a very positive impact on their instruction, and they really want to work with these people, so we'd like to finish that work. The second part is 4.5 math intervention coaches. These are people that were specifically added during the COVID to help with our students who are struggling in the area of math as we came back. Again, they've been in this year. I think what we'll find is they're doing a lot of wonderful things, and I think Lori will probably tell you we expect to see next year, as we move along, our scores to be positively impacted by the work of this group, as well as fewer students being referred to our MTSS, our multi-tier system of supports, at the elementary levels as we go forward. So we'd like to continue them for one more year. We think they're an added benefit. And I would add that the 4.5 or the math intervention coaches, we would look to pay for those through ESSER and Title I, so it would not be money added to the district. The 2.5 differentiation coaches are already in the budget, so it would just be rolling them over. The only new money that we're anticipating at the moment would be the addition of the 1.5 new teachers at kindergarten, the 0.5 to meet the needs of specials, and then we have increased, we already know that we have more students coming with more minutes, and we'll have more kids in special ed at the elementary levels at some of the buildings, primarily Roosevelt is one of them, and we would like to increase that by a 0.5 for special ed assistants for next year. That total, using a placeholder salary of $85,000, that's a $60,000 salary, which is a first-year teacher, not at a master's, but a little bit above a bachelor's with benefits added in. We anticipate that coming to a number of about $212,000. That would be our only new add, and that would be specifically because of students, not because of any new programming. All right, with that, I'm happy to take questions.
So I personally I would love to see more kids coming into our district every year and us growing and building schools, and because I just love kids. However, if there's any year that I'm welcoming of a 9-section decrease, is this year. Because having, it's actually really good timing for us with the implementation of kindergarten and adding those sections, having a few less, 140 less students coming in takes off a lot of burden on how we're going to manage this transition, and gives us some time to get our legs and bearings about us, and maybe in a year or 2 or 3, the full day kindergarten starts showing that we're going to start increasing again, and then it gives us time to figure out how we handle that. So I'm okay with that. As for the requests to increase a couple of, or keep several teachers for purposes, I absolutely agree. This is not the time for us to be scaling back when we're just at just trying to get our new reality under us. We had COVID last year where we were in and out of school. This year we're hoping that we're going to be in school full time. We got a lot of catching up to do. So removing teachers, I think, would not be the greatest idea this year. And then adding special ed teachers is always a good idea.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
Yeah, just to clarify, the special ed teacher, the half a person or the half a resource, that's based on data that you have, and
correct.
It's coming through in
Yes.
terms of a need from the data.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Jill still has part 3.
No, but I combined it. Sorry, I did the sections and staffing together. Sorry.
Okay, so you're good.
I'm good.
All right. Thanks, Joel.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for presenting it clearly for us in a way we can understand it.
Oh,
I know you do this all the time, so.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, It was just a discussion item, and it'll come back to the board next month as an action item. Okay. All right, let's move on now. Let's see if I can get the agenda straight here. Okay. All right, so now we have the presentation of the proposal for the ESSER 3 funds. Right, Eric?
Yes,
Okay.
and Lori, Joel, and Leanne have spent a lot of time on this and have worked well with Adam in terms of all the budgeting pieces, so I'm going to turn it over to them.
Sure. So this is an overview of how we'd like to spend ESSER 3 funds. ESSER 3 funds, as Joel mentioned, are supplemental to the budget. And ESSER 3 is the third installation in funding that schools are receiving to support recovery from the pandemic. So there was ESSER 1, which was called the CARES Act, and then ESSER 2, and now ESSER 3 is the American Rescue Plan, or ARP. So our plans for spending are actually aligned with survey results, as well as really the District 64 strategic plan. One of the conditions of ESSER 3 funding is that 20% of the funds need to be spent on learning loss. So the way this grant is written, we're really working towards supporting student learning. And so we've identified, as Joel mentioned, that we'd like to continue to support the math interventionists. So this year, we'd like to reimburse ourselves for the math interventionists using ESSER funds, and then continue with the math interventionists next year using funding from both ESSER and Title I to support that. We'd also this summer like to provide students with summer school opportunities, our math and reading intervention students, so that we can reinforce their growth over the summer. The middle schools have a great program called the Future Leaders Program, and it supports students who are at risk, and it really focuses on relationship building and helping kids avoid risky behavior, stress reduction, supporting anxiety. And we'd like to put some money towards program enhancement both this year and next year for those students. And then I've talked with the board at our student achievement update about expanding our kindergarten and first grade phonics programs. And so we'd like to use ESSER funding to purchase those materials. And then we have been in a prolonged K-8 math adoption because the pandemic sort of hit when we were starting to review programs and look at best practices in the area of math. And we're wrapping up our recommendations for the math program, and we'd like to put a portion of these funds to supporting part of that math adoption. And then finally, we'd like to put some funds towards the increase in the cost of lunch supervision for this year. So this year we increased our lunch supervisors to support social distancing. We don't anticipate that being extended into next school year. We'd like to reimburse ourselves for that.
Okay, how about comments or questions from the board?
I just have a question. So usually we offer summer school to, what's the right word you use? Not the kids in the ELS, no.
We do. We have an extended school year program,
Okay,
and that will continue as well.
Okay,
Yes.
so where do the funds, so we're using some ESSER funds for that, right?
That's actually a separate grant. That's the IDEA grant, which Dr. Frost manages. And so she's in contact with families right now, arranging for extended school year. This is separate. This is for our kids who.
But we are doing the other one.
Yes, yeah.
Other questions? Hmm?
Just to clarify, you mentioned here in the ESSER funds require that the grant money requires that a portion of it is used for learning loss. Are there any other criteria or any other stipulations imposed by this act that requires us to use the money or needs us to do something to use that money?
There are guidelines for how we use the money. There's a certain amount of money that has to be set aside, for example, for after-school programming, a certain amount of money that needs to be set aside for summer school programming. But both of those things are things that we would consider anyways, because they're ways that we focus on learning loss for kids.
But no other strings attached to this money.
There wasn't anything else, yeah.
And the only other question, I think you mentioned this earlier, I just want to clarify though, while there's some items like listed here for 21, 22, like the additional lunch supervision to support social distancing, right? That isn't something that we're planning on doing next year. We're just reimbursing ourselves next fiscal year for funds that we've spent this year. So it's just,
Exactly.
we're backdating some of our spending.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks.
All right, anything else on ESSER, Carol? Anything?
No.
Tom? All right, thank you. Good, all right, thanks for all the work on that. Okay, I think next, we're rolling right through here. Next on the agenda is an action item. It's discussion and approval of the Quest Food Management Services Contract Renewal. And you're playing the role of Adam.
So Val, can you just go ahead and introduce yourself and your title just before you start?
My name is Valerie Verhola. I'm the Director of Business Services. I'm here today to present a recommendation to the board on behalf of CSBO Adam Parisi for a one-year contract extension for the district's food service provider, Quest Food Management Services, for the 22-23 school year. Quest has been the district's food service provider since 2017, and each year we have been pleased with the service, relationship, and partnership the district has received. Quest does a wonderful job communicating with both the administration and parents, and the entire team at Quest works extremely hard to make sure students, parents are satisfied with the quality of the food service program. COVID has changed many aspects of our school, with meal service being one of them. Quest has been able to successfully pivot in order to abide by the district's and state requirements, including masks and abiding by vaccine and testing protocols for their staff. Quest has taken a proactive approach and made necessary changes to ensure a combined high-quality standard for our students' meals. At a time when many vendors are significantly increasing their fees to cover supply chain shortages and other issues such as staffing, Quest has committed to holding flat both their management and administration fees at 5% and 2% respectively for the upcoming school year. Therefore, the administration is recommending a one-year contract extension for the Quest Food Management Service for the 22-23 school year. Thank you.
Okay. All right, how about questions first? Any questions before we get the motion? Carol, were you getting a question?
No, I was just going to do the motion if no one has questions.
Okay. Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, approve the extension of the Quest Food Services contract for the 2022-2023 school year.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, so Carol had the motion, Phyllis had the second. How about discussion? This is related to food. Are the elementary schools still doing the pizza days?
Yes.
Okay. Just wondering.
So back in
That was a big concession we
Yeah.
had to give back this year. Yeah.
so back in 2017, this was a big deal. Getting Quest to figure it all out and do it right and get it right. Keeping pizza days so that the PTOs can still have the opportunity to make money, and our administration did an amazing job balancing that out. And I personally haven't heard any complaints regarding Quest, and prior to Quest, it really was not the same. So I'll be voting yes for this.
Okay.
I agree. Is Lindsay still our person?
Yeah.
Oh, love her emails. Her sense of humor is in there. I think she does a great job. Okay. All right, so any other questions on or comments on Quest? All right, I think we're ready for the vote.
All right, Pearl?
Yes.
Lubinsky, yes. Sotos?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Sellis?
Yes.
We're keeping the contract.
Okay, motion carries. All right, thank you. You did a great job. You can fill in for Adam anytime. Okay. All right, so next on the agenda is a proposed amended 22-23 school year calendar. Eric, you're up.
Yes, so as the board's aware, we did bring a calendar forward that the board approved. However, in conversations with District 207, there were some changes to the plan around winter break. And so we have now adjusted our calendar to be in alignment with that. And so we are bringing it forward to the board. And I'll also share that I met with the calendar committee this week, and we went over this one more time, talked through various options, and the committee is behind this recommendation.
Okay, and this is just a discussion item, and then next month there would be a motion on it.
So can you explain quickly, it's not on the agenda, but it's related to this calendar. I know e-learning has been, an issue. So can you explain what that would do to the 5 proposed emergency days if we were to approve that plan?
Sure. So if the calendar stays just as it is, which is just what we're doing now, is that if there were to be a cold weather day or a snow day, the first 2 would not affect the calendar, but once you get to the third one, it starts then having an effect, and there are certain pieces we have all laid out of how that happens. We try to take days from the middle of the year to try to ensure that we're still ending at the same time, but that would be the process.
So when you say proposed emergency days 5, you're saying that not all 5 are accounted for, only 2 are?
I'm saying that in our plan, we do different things on the days depending on how many days we've already had that year. So like if we only have 1, this is what happens. If we have 3, then a couple things happen.
So if, because I've really never paid attention to what happens on those, except that our kids get to go sledding. But you're saying that if we have 5, if we use 5 of them because we have 5 days where we have to close because it's just safer to do, up until 5, if we use all 5 of those, do we actually take away other days that we would have had off and make those days that were in school?
Yeah, so I think if anybody wants to, I think we only do the teacher records days first. Okay, and so there's 2 of those, and then if we get to the 5th day, then we would start affecting the calendar. Okay.
So you're saying that if we, because I was always under the impression, and probably my ignorance for not looking deeper into it, up to 5 days, we wouldn't add anything. We wouldn't take away the teacher's record days. We wouldn't make the kids go to school on days where they were off. It was after 5 that we would start forcing them to go to school. You're telling me that's not the case. You're telling me that only 1 or 2 days are really, that wouldn't affect the calendar. But after that, for every day we take away, for every day we don't go, we're taking away another day that was scheduled to not be there.
Either only by staff or, so days 3 and 4 only affect staff.
Okay.
Day 5 affects everybody.
Gotcha. So the first 4 days for students are
Correct.
free days.
Correct.
The 5th day for students would have to get replaced by something.
Correct.
Whether it would be a day during the year or a day added at the end. And then anything beyond 5 would have to get tacked on to the end if we couldn't find another day for it.
You got it.
Okay. So that's how it currently is.
Yes.
And then there's going to be a proposal to make some adjustments to that.
Well, no, because the board does not want to move to an e-learning plan in regard to the snow days. So we are holding off on that until we can come back and, present it to the board and everybody's on board.
Gotcha.
Anything else? Because I know there's been some community members which saw that District 207 and now the breaks aren't aligned. So obviously we want to align the winter break and spring break. Okay. All right, anything else on that? All right, if anything else comes up, certainly email Eric. Okay. All right, next we have our policy committee. has met, and so we have the first reading of policies from Press Issue 108 and just the general report from the Policy Committee. That is Gareth.
Thanks, Denise. Yeah, we spent, Phyllis and I, a couple hours, an hour and a half with Eric. I went through 200 plus pages of press. It was a pretty extensive session. I think the one thing is actually worth mentioning is what we didn't do that day was, because press actually in the memo advised that our attorney be present for a discussion around the new sex ed curriculum requirements, or actually maybe it's more of a decision the board has to make whether they adopt the new ones or keep the old ones, but it advised that our attorney be present, and with everything going on, as I understand it, that week with the court case down in Sangamon County, that our attorney was unavailable, so it's something that we have to come back to in March. But that really affects it. The detail around that and the decision that has to be made is detailed in only a footnote to policy 6 colon, I think it's 60, I think is off the top of my head.
60.
Yeah, but there was another area where it was mentioned that we actually took off as well. But I think we don't have to worry about adopting 660. It's more of the footnote and what we do in the future to change 660 that's important. So that's one thing. And I think the other area worth mentioning was the policy around public comments. And I know the wording is there somewhere if someone can find it, but
Towards the bottom.
it's what, yeah, I think it's such a long document.
Yeah.
Here, it'll maybe take a second to load, but the policy committee, we felt, having reviewed policy 2:230 around public participation at Board of Education meetings and petitions to the board, that we want to change, would propose to the board that we change the language to read at the end to say that petitions and written public comments to the board, which have been submitted through our email address for public comments, that they should be presented to the board in the next regular board packet. So that was another recommendation that we had. I think other than that, we also do want to talk in the March meeting not only about the sex ed curriculum, but also the policy around that red or blue line that we were all talking about in terms of what's the right level for the fund balance at the end of the year. And I think if the board, unless they disagree, I want to give us guidance. We were thinking about coming up with that in the March meeting when Phyllis and I and Eric can find a date. But other than that, pretty much recommend these changes to the board.
How about questions, comments from the board?
I just had two comments. Okay, so for 2:230, we have a related policy. I mentioned this to Denise and Eric earlier, and that is 2:140, which requires all questions or communication submitted through the active electronic link, along with the status of the district's response in the board meeting packet. So it's kind of related because we need both things, all of the public comments, but then we would also need all questions or comments submitted through the active electronic link. And that seems kind of weird, though, too. I mean, why is it elevated? Because they clicked on a link instead of just typing in our email addresses. So that's something that we might want to discuss later. And then also with respect to 2:230. So this is probably when Rebecca and I just first started on the policy committee. This is one of the first things we changed. Tony Luisi did draft that intro portion, that
the public comment
italicized portion, right? The one issue that we discussed with, I think it was just the prior board, so I don't think everyone on this board would know this necessarily, but the board is not allowed to prevent people from making comments about individuals. So Tony drafted it in a way where we are asking them not to, but if they do, we can't stop them. So that's the only thing. And I don't think it necessitates any revisions to this portion, but it's something that we should all know so that we don't violate the First Amendment or anything like that.
Yeah, and Gareth and Phyllis, if you're okay with it, since Carol pointed that out, I thought we should bring 2:140 to that meeting as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So just for a clarification, the public comments via email, is there a window of time where we take them? Or is it just, I mean, someone could send a message 3 weeks before the meeting? I'm just trying to, if there's some parameters on that.
Yeah, we talked about whether we should, but we felt it was better that we didn't, because if you put something down and somebody misses it, we felt that, you know, the next regular board packet could be interpreted by administration in a common sense way that would, you know, if somebody sent it, you know, 10 minutes before, you know, Natasha published it, for example, that, you know, it's just going to have to wait because it's not feasible, it's not practical. So we thought it'd be better to be, to leave that in the judgment of administration. As long as, you know, there's not going beyond one more, it should be fine. At least we felt. That was the back and forth Phyllis and Eric had at the committee meeting.
Yep.
If everybody else is okay with that, and it leaves room for common sense interpretation, basically.
And I think I heard too, the fund balance, you're looking at that policy?
That we would want to, and then we talked about at the end of the meeting
For
what
the
policies we'd like to talk about at the next meeting.
Yeah.
And that the fund balance one was one that came up.
When you
and
say
I
next
think-
meeting, you mean policy committee meeting or?
Policy
board
committee
Okay,
meeting,
just
yeah.
wanted to clarify.
But we might even be ready by the next regular meeting. It just depends on when we get scheduled. So.
Yeah.
And I would just look to other school boards, you know, to kind of how do you draft that? You know, I think look to other boards and what sort of policies do they have?
Agreed, and I think Eric and Adam too have a view from what they were trained on, and I think we'd weigh all that up and try to figure out where that line should be.
Yeah.
Good. Yep.
So then a couple other policies that have been on the back burner for a while are the purchasing one. I think we started that before you guys came on the board, and then also the professionals one,
Yeah.
with the architects and attorneys, and the 2-year cycle for that.
Right.
So those are two that have been just hanging out there, so.
They-
And I haven't had, I would attend your policy committee meetings, but they're during the day. I mean, if it was later, or if I could attend virtually, then I would. So maybe I'll just do that, I guess, the next time.
Yeah, that would be good. And those are top of mind, but we realized this press packet was pretty extensive.
yeah.
And I think the sex ed discussion is going to be
Yeah.
a long one as well. So I was thinking that in the summer, we would come back and look
Okay.
at those too.
I don't think there is pressing. No, I agree. So, okay. All right. And it thanks Policy Committee for your work in going through that big press issue. All right. All right. So we are rolling right here. Next on the agenda is our, the approval of the, oh, Carol, this is yours.
Sure. The approval of the recommended personnel report. Do you have any info about that before we move on?
Joel, is there anything you wanted?
No, I'm open for questions, but it's pretty straightforward. As we said, Denise said prior to the meeting, there's a number of retirements on it. I would just simply take a moment, I guess, to say, you know, these are always some of our, we're starting the season where we start to get lengthier personnel reports, but it's always one of those bittersweet times because we start to see names on there that we're sad to see retire and leave the district. People who've done wonderful things for the students and the families in our district. And as when I meet with them, as I tell them, I'm always really happy that they can retire and to move on to the next phase. But it's always difficult for us because it's sad to see them go. So this is one of those personnel reports. There's some really great staff members that we're seeing that are moving on, but I wish them the best.
Does anyone have questions for Joel or comments? Does anyone want to make the motion?
I move that the Board of Education Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, approve the personnel report dated February 24th, 2022, noting that the personnel report is based on the recommendation of the superintendent and not upon the board's direct knowledge regarding any of the specific individuals selected for employment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion before we vote? Phyllis, can you do a roll call, please?
All right, Sellis?
Yes.
Lubinsky, yes. Kennedy?
Yes.
Sotos?
If I vote no, do they have to stay? All right, Lowe, yes.
Pearl?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Next, we have the consent agenda. Does anyone want to remove anything from this? Okay, we have bills, payroll, and benefits, approval of the financial update for the period ending December 31st, 2021. The Resolution 1284, abating the working cash fund, the semi-annual review of closed minutes, and then the destruction of audio closed recordings, which is none. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, approve the consent agenda for February 24th, 2022, which includes bills, payrolls, and benefits, financial update for the period ending December 31, 2021, Resolution 1284, abating working cash fund, semi-annual review of closed minutes, and destruction of audio closed recordings, parentheses, none.
I second.
Gareth had the motion, Phyllis had the second. Is there any discussion? Phyllis, can you do a roll call vote?
Sotos.
Yes.
Lubinsky, yes. Kennedy.
Yes.
Pearl.
Yes.
Salas.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Let's see, next we have the approval of minutes. These are for our January 20th, 2022 closed meeting, the January 20th regular meeting, and then the February 3rd, 2022 special meeting. There's for that February 3rd meeting, whoever drafted those did a good job with catching all the motions and permutations. Is there any, does anyone want to make a motion?
I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, approve the minutes of the closed meeting on January 20th, 2022, the regular meeting on January 20th, 2022, and the special meeting on February 3rd, 2022.
Second.
Gareth had the motion. Who was it? Who had the second? Was it
I did.
Denise? Okay. Denise had the second. Phyllis, can you do, or is there any discussion?
It shows that I was absent on the 20th for the closed, but I don't believe I was. I think I showed up late, maybe.
I wonder if we had just done the roll, we did the roll call before you got here.
Right.
Yeah.
But it says the votes, to adjourn to close, so I guess I was absent for that.
And then we don't take a roll call
We don't take the roll to
until
get
we're
back in.
open. So I think
All
that
right,
was
then,
it.
then I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Phyllis, roll
Kennedy.
Yes.
Pearl.
Yes.
Sotos.
Yes.
Salas.
Yes.
Lubinsky, yes. Motion carries.
Okay. Okay, our next agenda item, wanted to talk about how we want to be transparent on how we want to fill our Board of Education seat, which Rebecca Little vacated. And so kind of the process. So if we want to talk about that, we have 9 applications. And so let's just talk about, are all applicants, do we want invited for an interview? Is everyone okay on that?
So how about I just read the portion of the policy in question so everyone knows what it says?
No, that'd be good.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is policy 2:70, and the last 2 sentences state, immediately following a vacancy on the board will publicize it and accept resumes from the district residents who are interested in filling the vacancy. After reviewing the applications, the board may invite the prospective candidates for personal interviews to be conducted during duly scheduled closed meetings.
Okay. And then I think kind of on that line too, Carol, the Open Meetings Act permits closed session for the, and I'm going verbatim here, the selection of a person to fill a public office, including a vacancy of a public office, when the public body is given the power to appoint under law or ordinance.
Right, we're allowed to, but then you still need to have a motion and vote before you can go into closed, so it's a 2-part.
Correct. Yep.
process.
No,
And,
you're
and
right.
does selection include the process of interviewing versus the process of deliberating and voting? Not voting, rather, because you can't vote in closed session, but the process of deliberation to select.
Yeah, it includes both.
Are you saying that, is there a possibility to bifurcate it? Because right now our policy says the interviews are closed, but then are you saying that, if there are deliberations and those would be handled a different way? Or are you saying the opposite, Gareth?
No, I'm just saying that there's two components
Yeah.
to that process. There's the interviewing, and then there's the slash. Our attorney's saying we have the right to do both under the Open Meetings Act. I guess the question is, the Open Meetings Act, I think, trumps our policy in terms of what we can do, and the board can always vote to overrule its policy as long as it's within law. So I think the question just falls back then on the board. What are we comfortable with in terms of interviewing? And I think it might be easy to split it into two, because some people may want to do interviews in open session, some may want to deliberate in closed. I personally wouldn't mind doing both in open, but I think it'd be good to hear what other board members would like.
And so just your rationale on doing both in open, probably transparency, is there?
It's transparency. At the end of the day, this is about somebody who's going to have a say on, you know, what is over $80 million of expenditure of taxpayer money every year. We're on the record here in open meeting most of the time. So for me, it's if someone can't interview in that environment, you know, and we should deliberate to pick someone, is my theory, in that environment as well, then, you know, I just think that's the right thing to do. I can understand, though, if people have different points of view, but that's my personal thought on it.
And so when I had, and just kind of, when I had sent out the email on how he was, I was just going off policy, and I had consulted with the Illinois Association of School Boards, with Dee, who's done some training for us, and she said no other school board that she works with does interviews in open. So I just want to share that. That was my conversation with her, and so I just thought that's what we would do. So that's how I came to that.
I do think, though, this board has a history of doing it, at least the last time when, I think it was Eastman 2 might have resigned. There was
2018.
Yeah, there was.
Eastman 2.
There was I think, an interview in open session for that one. So this board is practiced a little differently. But again, this is a different board. I think if we all, you know, what we choose to do is, but it would be, I understand if you want to give the people interviewing a heads up.
Well, and I just think we need to, I mean, I think whatever the board wants, I want to do. I just think we need to set it up differently, you know, because if it's an open session, do we just ask the 9 people to be here and pull names? You know, because if I was asked when I want an interview in an open interview, I'm going to pick the last slot, because then I get to hear everyone else. Strategically, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to pick 9:30 or whatever it's going to be, so I can hear everyone else before me. But that's just how I think. So I just think whatever we decide, I just want to let the candidates know, just so we're transparent. And so the you know, when we had set them up, I was telling them close, and I just felt like how do we change the rules on them? So I just want to, what does the board want to do? And then how do we communicate that to the applicants?
So I don't remember exactly, but we may have had all the applicants come at the same time, and they sat in a room, and one would come interview while the other stayed in the room, and then that person would leave and another person would come in, so it alleviated the possibility of any of them hearing the one prior to them. And they each had the same level of, you know, they didn't hear the questions, unless one of them felt like texting the person that they were going up against, and that's, you know, can't stop that from happening. But I think there's a way to do that.
Totally.
I personally would love to, thank you for giving us the opportunity to weigh in on this.
And that's what I wanted to add to.
I would like to see that the interviews are done in open.
And then process the one at a time.
When we all, yes, and process them in one at a time. When we all ran, we did all our campaigning in open. We did our, what are they called? It's been so long.
Forums.
Our forums in open. The public got to hear, they got to ask us questions. And I think it would be, you know, I think it's the same thing here. I think the public should have the opportunity to hear, you know, who these candidates are and what they have to offer. I would be okay with doing our deliberation in private, as when we vote for our president. We go and vote in a little box, and it's private to us. So I don't see that there would be any, you know, reason not to do that. The same way that when people vote for us, their vote for us is private to them. It's not general knowledge to the whole world. So I can find a justification for that, and I think it would just probably be, you know, best to potentially do that portion of it in closed. So if you're willing to split the way you're going to propose it, that's most likely the way I would lean.
I think then, and I just want to make sure I might have heard you incorrectly, I think then the official vote to appoint the person is an open session.
The official vote itself, our
But the
deliberation.
deliberation,
Right,
yes,
our
yeah,
deliberation
okay,
would be.
Thank you. Yep.
And that's really because you can't, under Robert's rules, you have to vote yes or no on a motion, and so you can only put one person up on a motion.
Right.
That will be done in public.
Right. Well,
You
then
can't
that-
have 9 people.
And that
we're
would be
all
okay.
saying,
Right.
in public, so that just couldn't happen.
Right, so in 2018, if you put the other people in a different room, that was fine. I think we weren't live streaming back then, so we have that issue. So what about just giving everybody all of the questions ahead of time, and then also putting them in another room? I mean, it gives them time to prepare.
Yeah, well, if we give everyone the questions ahead of time, then it doesn't really matter if they come here at their time slot or not, because they'll just be, but everyone will be prepared. The only difference is the people who are later get to watch the responses of the people in front of them.
By the way, do we have to live stream? Is it in our policy?
I
You're
mean, I
the
think
policy
people
guy.
like that.
I know, I'm like,
I
I'm
mean,
trying to.
come on.
I'm
It's
trying
convenient so that they can watch from home.
Right, but
Maybe we could suspend the live stream for the interviews so that we can keep it a level playing field. I mean,
public can
it's-
hold us accountable by watching the replay. That will
Right.
be on YouTube like it used to be.
I guess the goal here is to make sure that each candidate has the same opportunity as the other. And if we have to suspend live stream for that hour that or however many hours it is that we're interviewing, people can still come here. But if it's done for the purpose of making sure that each candidate has the same, opportunity level playing field, then I can justify suspending the live stream if that's what we needed to do.
I think we should keep the live stream. Could you just, when they're in that separate room, just tell them not to watch the live stream?
I mean, we could do
I
that.
mean,
We
I
could-
think
Or
we would
just
trust
have
them
'em
enough not
here
to do that.
And just pull, pull on a hat, have them all here from 7 to 9:30.
But then they're
and-
listening. Then they're listening to what the other person is saying. What I think Carol is saying is we can ask them to not have their phones with them and listen to the live stream. And if they do, well, then they're not getting my vote anyway, because then they they basically disregarded our request for making a level playing field. So we could just easily do that.
But then their friends doing it, and so I
Hey.
don't think we're going to stop it.
We're not going
I
to stop
mean,
it completely,
yeah.
but we should try our best.
Phyllis?
I think they should be in open session for sure, deliberations closed, like an interview, but I think just give them all the questions and they'll all be prepared, and if it's live streamed, I mean, who cares? When you're campaigning, your opponent sees what you're saying. My thought.
And then how do we choose who goes first out of a hat? That way at least we can make that somewhat, it's not who signed up first, it's random.
I mean, I think that's the fairest, when I set them up initially, when we had that, I just went in the applications, the order that Nick gave them, just went down, what slot, but I want to keep it fair. But, so I'm hearing a few things. Everyone gets the questions ahead of time. Folks are asked not to go to the live stream, but keep the live stream? Is that what we're thinking?
I think so. I mean,
Okay. And then we could just pull in the hat and then invite people in. We set out 15 minutes a time. Were you guys good on that?
It's fine.
I just think because you have so many candidates.
I mean,
At the end of the day, if I think if some people are being really long-winded, you might need to cut them off. But if we think we have too many questions, the problem is we want to ask the same questions to everybody. So maybe we just, how many questions do we have? Like 6 or 7? We
I
can just say
think
a
there
couple of
was-
minutes. If you can keep
Yeah.
it to a couple of minutes per question.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to introduce it, just for the candidate. There's 6 minutes. We have 15 minutes on our timer, and even set the timer, just so we are keeping, I think, things equal and fair.
Well, if they have the questions ahead of time, they can just go through their answers.
Yeah, it should be quicker. You're right, Carol. I think that's a good point.
But I'm fine with everything in open. Also.
Okay. All right, so in
Wait,
open.
even the deliberations?
I mean, however, whatever you guys want.
Okay, so you're okay with deliberations in open as well?
Yeah.
Okay, and Tom, you wanted deliberations in closed?
Yes.
And Phyllis closed?
I think
For
so.
deliberations?
Yeah.
I would like deliberations in closed. Gareth, you wanted both in open?
Yeah, so it might come down to Nikki because the motion, if it's a 3-3 tie, it would But that's really a board thing, not the candidate thing, so I don't think we need to worry about
Well, and I
that
think you're right,
Yeah.
that we can make that decision,
as a board. yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm okay with it and open to it, just seems odd, like, to discuss their opinions in public in front of other people. I mean, like, I don't know, I don't like that idea, but, I mean, I'm flexible and I'm not stuck in the sand. But I do agree, when you go vote, you vote in private.
So I guess, I don't think it's a tie. I think it's three of us want deliberations in closed.
And you need 4
Right.
votes to go to closed. So Nikki would be the 4th vote you would
Okay.
need.
Okay. But I think from this group, we'd like to see it enclosed, but Nikki would be the decider. Okay, yep, I hear you. Okay, so we're inviting all 9 then, is kind of what I'm hearing, people.
Yep.
I think that's, any other details? Any details that I'm missing, Eric, or anything you can think of?
No.
I just want people, other questions that you don't think that.
I'm
covered.
confused about something. We need 4 votes to go into closed?
Assuming all 6 board members voted,
But
if
if
it
there's-
tied 3-3, the motion would go into close, would
He's
fail.
talking about the next meeting when we actually vote to go into closed.
Oh, we're not voting today on whether we should go into, what we should be doing.
Yeah, this is just a discussion,
Okay.
Just so then I think we
Gotcha.
can set up the interviews and have it just transparent about what we're doing.
Understood.
Yeah.
Although, just something to bear in mind, if I remember right, you are allowed to vote for closed sessions ahead of time. I know that was on a previous board that we did
Yeah,
that.
we don't
There's
have
something
a
in the
action
Illinois.
There's
Open
there's
Meeting.
no action item now, so.
Yeah, it's too late, right? Okay. And our deliberations, Denise, are we going to decide on how we're going to deliberate on the night?
So as far as like a process?
Yes.
Yeah, and so, we can talk about this. One of the, in talking with another board, they ended up, when they had, this many applicants, they then, when the board went into deliberations, let's say you have your 9 people, we all rank them. So you give your highest person 9, and then 8, and then 7, and then we can tabulate them, and whoever surfaces, 2, 3 people to the top, I think those are the folks that we can talk about if everyone's okay with that.
As long as I don't have to rank all 9, if I decide I don't want to give any points to anybody, I guess I get that right too.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to rank all 9. You can only rank 3 if you wanted to, or 2 or 1.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so I just thought that since we have so many, does that help us then, kind of get to a few that we want to talk about? Okay. All right, so that's that. So this meeting, I think, in conjunction with the meeting to look at the COVID mitigations, talked about scheduling this on Monday. Nikki is available on Monday, talked to her earlier. And so I know when we originally looked at a COVID mitigations meeting, it was virtual. Is this virtual? Is this in person? What are we thinking?
Is it combined with the candidates on?
Yes.
Then in person, I would go virtual if it was just a one item, but if it's the candidate interviews, I'd want to do that.
That's it. What
in
time were you
person.
thinking of starting?
I thought we talked about I think Juris got a conflict till 7?
7's good. The later, the better.
Okay, is that okay with you?
Yes.
So we're talking about which day exactly?
Monday.
Okay, so Monday the 28th.
This Monday?
Yes.
To do candidate interviews?
Yes.
And we're going to vote on that same day whether we're going to do it in closed or open?
I think we're doing the interviews in open, but then deciding if deliberations are going to be in open or closed.
Someone would make the motion to go into closed and they'll either fail or not, So
And do we, so how are we going to handle, how are we going to tell our candidates what we're doing? Because maybe there's a candidate out there that doesn't want their interview deliberated in open. Maybe they would withdraw if they knew that we were deliberating them in open.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something that they know that we're going to discuss about them that they don't want it to be done in open, and they would rather just not be subjected to that. So how are we going to handle that?
There's the possibility.
Tell them that there's a
motion could fail,
possibility
right?
that it could potentially be in open, and if they have a problem with that, they should withdraw.
Okay, no, I think that's I think we want to, be upfront, and the candidates, yeah, I sent them the link and, that we were meeting about this if they wanted to watch the meeting, just so they can, but deliberations right and open or closed to be decided. Okay.
So if anyone is
That's a good
watching, I
point.
don't want them to rely on what I said this evening, because from now until Monday, I can change my mind.
Really?
Yes. I've done it in the past.
This will be like a first.
No, not.
No, let me write this down, Tom. Okay.
Could I ask, have you had any thoughts, Denise, around the order of the agenda? Because you got something that might attract a lot of public comment with the plan, yeah, the strategies, the COVID strategies plan, and then you got the interviews. So is there an idea in terms of the order of those things? Because I guess one of those 9 people is going to have to get used to sitting around listening to public comment anyway. But so I don't know if you want to give them that trial ahead of time. But is there an idea or something you haven't given that much thought to yet?
So want to do what you guys want, obviously, but I think it would be helpful to start our interviews at 7, and then we have the candidate interviews from 7 to, I guess, 9:15 or 9:30, give us a little window. And, then do we go into the COVID mitigations? Do we go into deliberations? Because then after the COVID mitigation, there would be we have to do public comment at one point.
Maybe a good idea would be interviews, public comment, COVID mitigation plan, then do the deliberations at the end, especially if it's going to be closed in the end. It might just.
Yeah. So, and the only thing to that, Gareth, would
Yeah.
we be open to doing interviews and then the COVID update and then public comment, which is what we've been doing on our agenda, just to get the information out first?
I think it's because it's an action item, not a update. I would say public comment should come first. But
So the other option, though, is if we block out an amount of time for the interviews, then people would know when to show up, kind of, right?
Right.
yeah.
But then we're having 9 people wait, right? And they won't find out until, how long do you think it would take us for the deliberations? And they would be here till, I don't know.
Well, they can go
11,
home.
Yeah, I don't
right?
think they're going to wait.
Wait for the
I wouldn't
motion,
think
right?
they-
Yeah, they're not going to be part of that meeting anyway, if our deliberations last.
No, because then we would have to vote in open.
Right.
So that's why they would have to stay.
Yeah,
Or
we're
they
not
would want
motioning to
stay.
adopt the person that night. That would be the next meeting, right?
Yeah, but
Right.
they wouldn't sit with us until the next meeting, but they can, if they wanted to stay until the end to find out, or they can go home and watch their
Yeah,
their
that's right.
fate.
They could actually go home.
They could go home and watch and see if they won or not.
Yeah.
Did I get the Emmy? Okay, so, all right, so I'm hearing that we want public comment. Is everyone, what are other perspectives on that? Do you want the COVID update, then public comment, or do you want the public comment first?
It doesn't really matter to me.
Doesn't matter.
I think procedurally, I agree with Gareth. We should do public comment first.
Okay. Okay.
That's fine.
I agree with that.
And I think, Carol, to your point, I think we would have, an approximate time of 9:30, so we can communicate that. I think that's a good point. Okay. All right. And so this is in person, is what I'm hearing, right? All right. And I think that is it.
It'll be here, right? In this building.
We'll have to see.
I was wondering if we give Niles PD a break and go to Park Ridge, but yeah, we'll figure out the right spot to do it.
Yeah. And so then I think the goal would be kind of a little bit longer of a timeline, is to then at the March 17th meeting, we vote in public on appointing the person, and then they actually sit for the meeting, that meeting.
So March 17th is
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day. So I was going to send you a message. For me, really bad day.
Why wouldn't we just vote on Monday, then?
Yeah, but I'm just letting you know, with me, St. Patrick's Day, there's a very good chance I won't be able to be here
Yeah.
due to business needs.
Could we put an action item on just in case? But the person isn't, until they get sworn in at the next meeting, they're not going to sit as a board member anyway. So if we can always defer it, we don't have to do it that night if we were split for some reason.
I think the 17th is a really bad night for a board meeting to begin with, but that's a different story.
And I guess, so the calendar's been out there.
I know.
I agree, it's my 18-year-old's birthday. And so, I hear you on that. but, you know, I'm gonna be at the board meeting. So, and
So could we have an action item, just in case? If we're
So I
all,
guess-
if we're in consensus, why wait?
For Monday?
Yeah, you don't have to swear them in until the following meeting, so they're not officially a board member until the following meeting.
but then that's not an open, I don't know. I
No,
don't
it's
know.
still being open.
No,
We'd close-
we're
we'd
going
clo-
back
we'd
into
go-
open to vote, so we might as well just have the action item on that same night. And that way they do know their fate and they are confirmed. I thought that was what was the plan was anyway. I thought they were gonna know that night.
Okay, is that what you guys want?
I agree.
Yes.
Okie dokie, all right, so we might have a board member in that soon. Okay. And then just a quick thing about the March 17th meeting. Rebecca Little has resigned, obviously, and she's going to join us for the March 17th meeting just to recognize her for her 3 years service on the board. Okay? All right, so if there's anything else that comes up, please contact me and let me know. I'll probably be communicating with the 9 applicants tomorrow. Okay? All right, thanks, you guys. All right. And I think we might be on the home stretch here. Okay, so we have other pieces of information. Eric, other discussion items.
The one discussion item I wanted to have with the board is the location of our board meetings for next year. Pretty soon, we will be bringing the calendar for dates, but right now, we just wanted to focus on the location. So with the Jefferson construction, we have an ideal space for board meetings at Jefferson. It is easiest for us to continually set up in one location. However, I do know that sometimes boards prefer to be in the schools. So I just wanted to kind of hear from the board on where you're at as we start planning for next year.
I'm fine with Jefferson, but then you could still continue to rotate and highlight schools and, you know, have them do they've been doing videos anyway lately. So I'd be fine with Jefferson.
I think, you know, visiting a school once every 2 years, maybe we just cut the rotation rather than try to fit them all in every year. Maybe a good compromise so that we still, especially, you know, I think when there's more than a video, I guess fortunately the time I've been on the board has mostly been in a pandemic, but I think it was the Roosevelt one with the STEM and that demonstration. I think that was good for the kids to come in and show that and show what they've been learning and for us to see that. So I think, you know, it doesn't have to be every school every year, but having some level of rotation, I think I'd appreciate.
Right, while school is in session. Yeah.
While school's in session,
exactly.
yeah. But trying to hit all
over the summer it doesn't.
All 7 right in 1 year is most probably a challenge. So
The truth of the matter is, I mean, this board year, starting in August, did we visit every single school?
Yes, we have.
Once.
Once.
And we still had the majority of our
field.
meetings here.
Yes.
So I still think that with the amount of meetings that we have, we could potentially still fit in, you know, our, you know, 1 meeting per school, especially our K through 5 schools. We could potentially fit in 1 meeting of each of those every, you know, calendar or every school calendar year, and then do the rest of them, you know, at Jefferson. And if it doesn't work out, you know, that we didn't visit one, we can double up on it the year after. But I think it would still be nice to visit the schools, you know, just because a lot of things change in 2 years. But my input shouldn't even matter.
What?
My input shouldn't even matter.
Well, you'll enjoy it a little.
I don't think so.
You know, Eric and I, just kind of if we move to having the board meetings at Jefferson more often, I wonder if if we might invest in a better camera. I do hear some folks saying the camera I think could be a little clearer, you know, or do you have one camera on the board, one on the, because I don't think the public ever sees the podium. And so I just think, you know, could we do some things like that which shows different angles that you probably can do easier in one setting?
Or just rotate the camera for public, because it's one YouTube feed, you know, so that's why it might get complicated with two cameras. We could still just rotate them.
When we're at Jefferson, I think your recommendation is probably really easy to handle. Seeing everything that goes on to even get what we have going on here, I just want to applaud whoever does all that, because there's a lot of wires on the floor and tape and everything just to even get us to be able to do it, and then it has to be mobile to go to every place that we go to with different pathways and hope people don't trip. And so maybe when we have a place to be, that could definitely be something that we can consider.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear you, Tom.
But Eric, you're saying that that place to be would be all set up for 2022 to 23?
Yes, correct.
So he's saying that they do have that facility. Okay.
Maybe there's a different path here. I don't know. I just thought of this, but I know some school districts have the board go and have coffee in certain areas and have a coffee. And maybe there's, I don't know, a way to do it slightly differently because of the cost of setting everything up in every school. If we're going to have a room that will be dedicated to us, maybe then we do a different way to visit the schools. Maybe we have some way of doing that so that the board is seen in each of the schools.
Yeah.
If that's an alternative, I'd be happy to hear that, so to keep the cost down and keep it in one location.
Yeah, and I think just kind of doing the math, if, you know, we have roughly 12 meetings a year scheduled, and if we do 8 schools, then 4 of them would be at Jefferson, the other 8 would be at the schools. Or if we're going to do it every other year, then obviously there's that much more at Jefferson. So I've kind of heard those 2 ideas so far.
I didn't consider Juris. I kind of like Juris, where it actually doubles up. We do all our meetings in one location to avoid the cost and the difficultness of having to set up and break down, and then maybe do like a public, meet and greet of the board members at schools, on off days, or even the day of a meeting, 10 minutes before, 20 minutes before. But that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, as long as we're not debating public business and discussing public business, we can. An attorney can correct me if I'm wrong. We can, 7 of us can show up at a place. We just can't discuss school business. So we could be introduced, and the president could say some words, and we can get a demonstration of something. All that I don't think is conducting public business. So.
All right, you need other feedback, Eric, or you got?
I think a majority are in favor of Jefferson, it sounds like. I'm not sure. Phyllis, what did?
I'm okay with Jefferson visiting.
With Gareth's idea? Yeah, okay. All right, then I have it, yes.
I do like the boards that have one set up, like District 62. They have this set up, everything's there. It's and I think it just, you're able to do some things, like Tom said, that you can't do when you move it around.
Yeah, okay. All right, that was all I needed for that section. Thank you.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. All right, so next meeting, Monday, and then regular board meeting, March 17th. Okay. All right, so any new business? Any new business?
So you'll let us know when you schedule the next policy committee meeting, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to think about that.
Okay.
So evenings are better for you, Carol?
Yeah, but I mean, don't schedule it around my schedule. Just do whatever, you guys can do, and I'll see if I can appear remotely or even call in.
Yeah, I'm fine with doing it at night. It's also the administration. I want to give that consideration to that
Zoom
too.
help you? Like if they
Oh
log
yeah, I could
into
just do
Zoom?
that. Yeah.
So if you guys just created a Zoom while you were doing it, she could just log into Zoom.
Yeah,
and
we
listen.
we had our computers there. It wouldn't have been.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or you could go a call. I know that's pretty old school, but you could do a phone call in.
Yeah.
All right. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, and then, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is 8:57 PM on February 24th, and our meeting is adjourned. All right, thank you. It is. Nikki's going to be like, oh my gosh.